Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, Swiping Over 40, Online Dating for Mature Women. So all you ladies over 40 years old that are looking for love the first time around, or maybe it's the second or third time around, join in on our podcast as I interview all different types of men from all walks of life who give advice on dating, how to navigate the internet dating process, things that men are looking for. We share stories, looking really forward to sharing all this valuable information with you and helping you find love the first, second, or even third time around. I have our special guest, Kevin West, back for the fourth time. We're going to discuss, yes, we are. We're going to discuss dating over 40 women, internet dating. And Kevin, again, he is an author. He's a speaker. He's an actor. Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about yourself again?
Not a ton. How about I'm a longtime veteran television actor from MacLeod to The Righteous Gemstones recently on HBO. I founded a company that I was an entrepreneur of that was award-winning for 23 and a half years. I've published 3 books, and I'm also a keynote corporate speaker on communication, known as Communication Entrepreneur.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming to the show again. I know we've had a great time discussing this topic of online dating and specifically, speaking to women who are, their second time around, maybe over 40, they're divorced, or maybe they just haven't found love in the traditional, or if I could even call it the traditional way, the old-fashioned way. And we're on the internet and we're talking about different topics that are of importance in order to help people navigate through that process of internet dating, being that it's different from the way we used to do it. And this is pretty much the norm these days, especially with the COVID-19. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring up a couple situations, so I'm just going to throw it out there, a background check. Do you think that it is important for a woman to do a background check on their date before they go out? Meaning there's so many catfish and, people are predators on the internet, that's been proven. There's a certain percentage. Again, I can't come up with it at the tip of my head. However, there are some background check sites that people can subscribe to, for $10-20 a month, where they can run the phone number and they can, check the person out a little bit just to make sure that they're not a wanted felon, basically, and also find out if they're married or not. And if their phone is actually a phone or it's a Google phone, or what do you think about background checks? Do you think that's important to keep women safe?
Well, I mean, I would never be one to tell a woman not to do whatever it is that makes her feel comfortable. I don't know that I want to use the word important. I think it's one of the many options that you have. I mean, Google numbers are very obvious by the area code that they are, but the reality is that I still will always feel fairly strongly, Kathlyn, that you have to trust your gut, and I still will always come from the place of, if you have your boundaries and protocols, which goes on top of what we said last episode, and you've had conversations and you feel there are red flags, this is part of my concern with avoiding trusting your gut. When you know your life has taught you to see red flags, feel red flags, have a spidey sense about red flags, you should listen to it. And so if that leads you to want to have a background check, okay. When my spidey sense for Kevin says somebody might be just BS crazy, I think we know what that 2 words to bat crazy. I just walk. I don't need a background check, and it's not a male-female thing. It's just when my spidey sense says this is what I sense, I just walk away. But if someone doesn't trust their gut, totally understand that. Certainly a background check, and men lie all the time. They lie constantly. So somebody being married, I mean, this is not uncommon. So if that's what makes you feel comfortable to meet for a coffee during the day or something at, later in the afternoon with the sun out in public, then by all means, whatever it is that makes you comfortable, that's what you should do, for sure.
Yeah, and the general consensus from the men that I've spoken with in regards to this topic of background checks have the same response as you. Definitely. Trust your intuition. If your gut says something's not right, it's not right. However, there's nothing wrong. And again, the general consensus from men and women that I've spoken with is to running a quick background check. Now, it's not the full, rap sheet kind of background check. Basically, it'll tell you, are you who you say you are? You run a phone number and you see that it comes back to that person, or it comes back to a woman and you see that on her Facebook, they're actually married. So it can save you some time and it can save you some heartache. And some men, let's face it, are, experts at being dishonest. And
Sure.
so I see value in it. And I also see how it could come up with a little cray-cray. But if you really think about the reason it's being done, it's not trying to find out all kinds of deep, dark, dirty secrets on a person. It's just really, it's basically, is this person who they say they are? Yeah.
True. I just, and also, I'm not trying to, I guess I'm not trying to make people spend money, Kathlyn, but, if you're actually a logical person in this world and you're somewhat of a legitimate person, and I mean this both as funny as it's supposed to sound and also deadly serious, is, if you're not the Unabomber living in the ground in some self-made home and you actually have a job, you probably have a LinkedIn profile, you probably have a Facebook profile, you probably have an IG or a Twitter account. Again, when someone shuns themselves from being not a complete open book, but what we would call, those are really basics, honestly, to me. It's like a woman lying about having kids would be similar to a guy lying about something else. It's like, if you put my name into Google, I'm everywhere. And even without someone being on television, most men that I know that have some sort of legitimate business life have a LinkedIn profile. Yeah. So if you're coming up with donut on everything about this person you're talking to, then sure, feel free. Absolutely. I just think that there are a lot of ways that depending on what you're seeking, maybe somebody shouldn't. Listen, I'm all for discretion. Social media kind of makes me crazy. I kind of wish I didn't have to do it. So I can understand there's some really legitimate men out there who have a real life and who may not have all that. I get it. But so yes, a background check can certainly be a very, very last resort backup. Absolutely.
I like what you said about the red flags. That a lot of time we are optimistic about somebody we've met. They're saying the right things. We have that attraction going on, and we're kind of excited, or are excited about, getting to know this person on a deeper level. And I can tell you, I have talked to so many women that have been duped, so to speak. I had one woman who was in a relationship for almost a year with a man. And they went out, they were together on the weekends, most weekends, not all of them, and sometimes when he would cancel last minute, she'd call him, he had laryngitis or he was taking care of his, ailing mother and couldn't come to the phone or what have you. So those should be red flags right there. Not that it can't be the truth, but those to me are the red flags when your gut tells you, I'm not so sure that this is, he's on the up and up. And yeah, we've been seeing each other 6 months, a year. But what are you doing on the weekdays? And what are you doing on some weekends? So I, at the time, I had subscribed to one of those sites at the time, those background check sites. I said, let me do a little investigating for you. And I investigated, and sure enough, he'd been married for almost 30 years, and he was still married. There was no laryngitis. There was no elderly, Alzheimer's, mom that was dependent upon his care. It was all lies. She was heartbroken. However, you didn't really need the background check for that. If you're not, if after a year, your gut feels.
Did you never go to his house in a year?
Yeah, exactly.
That's no, I mean, see, this is part of what I'm saying is this is what I'm saying, Kathlyn, is that what is your life, what has your life taught you? I would want everybody watching your program to just stop, think way beyond dating, think about buying shoes. I'm not joking. Think about leasing an apartment when you were a kid. Think about buying a home. Think about every single procedure you've done in your life and the kind of logic that comes along with making a good decision. And when you talk about something as potentially dangerous and also something as important as your heart and your physical safety, you're going to see somebody for a year and never go to his house. The guy's a complete a-hole. That's not the point. I just don't know what you're thinking. I seriously, I don't. And never available on a weekend to go to, like, I have no idea what you're thinking. Seriously, I promise you, I just don't get it.
Well, then that brings us to another point. Okay, ladies, think about this. If somebody doesn't invite you to their house, there's a reason. And it doesn't always mean there's another woman, but it means there's something that they don't want you to see. Maybe there's something they're being dishonest about. But let's flip that around. You know, if you're dating someone, you just met them, you know, how long, maybe you met them, via the internet, maybe you've had no dates, maybe you've had a couple dates. So when is it too soon for a woman to invite a man that they've met online over to their house?
I'm never able to answer any of those questions, because to me, this is where we start looking to try and make something cookie cutter that isn't cookie cutter. That's my whole thing about don't call somebody for 3 days and all this BS that's been written in books and crap. It's like, that's all BS. Yeah. It's all BS. It's one of the things I said in the very first episode that, I dated someone for 5.5 years that I, was intimate with 5 hours after I met her. So, and that's those 5 hours later was at my house. So again, I can't tell somebody what their line should be. People need to pay attention to the feeling inside they have and trust it. But at the same time, there is some sense of logic in understanding that the concept of a relationship, unless I'm on crack, Kathlyn, always possible, it's always possible, is, I think the phrase of relationship is share your life. Isn't that what a relationship is? And how is sharing your life when you start getting into months and months and you never share a weeknight together, or you never share a weekend together? You never see both people's dwellings. I mean, I don't know what someone's definition of a relationship is. I know it's varied. And I don't know what someone's definition of sharing is. It's varied. And there is no too soon or too long. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But at some point, weren't you looking to share your life with someone? I honestly and genuinely am at a loss for words when I hear some of these stories. I don't get it.
I know, and I know, Kevin, that you've heard as many, if not more, as I have, and I've heard a lot of these stories. But as a woman, living, maybe you don't have, you don't have a man in the house, or you're not online, right? Unless you have some roommate that's of the opposite gender. I would be uncomfortable having a date pick me up. Someone pick me up. Even on a second date, most often, I mean, sometimes you just have that person you vibe with, but in all reality, is it really safe to have somebody see where you live?
Well,
yeah.
You went from second date from a year. That's a big Grand Canyon.
Well, now I'm going back.
I know, but I'm just saying somewhere between second date and a year, these questions have to no longer be questions. And I hope that every woman out here has some form of a simple buddy system. If you're going on a date with someone, you should have a friend that you send his picture to, where you claim that you're going by name of the place, and this should occur whether it's you're going to his place. Same thing. This is supposedly his address. Somebody should know your whereabouts, and with a decent time frame. And then you have to be responsible enough, know how much fun you're having, to make sure you text that person and say, I'm fine.
100%. And I will tell you, that's a rule of mine. You don't have, that is a rule that I always have a friend that knows exactly what you're saying, where I'm going. I'm in public place, residence, it doesn't matter, when I'm expected to be done. And we make sure we have that check-in system. And I also, if I actually have decided to go to somebody's residence, then I'm going to provide the address. So if I don't get back to you by X time, call the cops. One of my friends is actually a homicide detective, so she's all about I better get back to her, because she will call the cops. But in reality, I've heard of situations that have been, unfortunate situations that women barely got out of based on their not being aware that this person, they really don't know them. You're stepping blindly into somebody else's space. So when you're stepping into somebody else's space, you're even more vulnerable, because you don't know what they have within their place. At one time, there was a I had gone to somebody's place that I had met, and I'm going to tell you, I was aware, and this is something I want to talk to people about. Um, I like champagne, and we had had conversations that was one of my drinks of choice. When I went over there, he had champagne, but he pulled glass. I just got it, that intuition, that gut feeling. He pulled glasses out of the freezer, 2 champagne frosted glasses, and poured the champagne. But there's something about the way he was acting, it made me leery. Like, somebody can actually put something in a glass and at the bottom, date rape, drug or what have you. So I just like politely spilled my champagne, rinsed my glass out, poured a half a glass and left, because I followed my gut intuition. There was something that wasn't right. And whether it was right or wrong, I'll never know. But I felt in my gut that there was something that wasn't right about that situation. And
oldest cliche in the world, better safe than sorry.
Better safe than sorry. And again, trust your gut. There's a reason I felt that way. And I don't know what it was. And I think we pick up on, subconsciously, we pick up on little cues or behaviors that somebody has that seems different from what we've experienced before, or similar if it was a negative experience. And then moving forward from that, so I watched a dating show or a dating YouTube show recently, and it kind of diverted me from where I was going to go speaking with you tonight. And it was questions to ask, questions that a man would like a woman to ask, when they're getting to know somebody. So on the phone call, and we talked, or on the first meet or the first date. Now, you and I did talk about getting to know somebody without interrogating them. Can you come up with some questions that you may ask a woman, or some questions that you would like to be asked that aren't invasive or intrusive, that you feel that the woman is trying to get to know you in a very healthy way?
Sure. Well, first of all, again, like I said, Kathlyn, I view the questioning concept having to do much more with what it feels like. I still think it comes down to how much does it flow in the conversation, and what is the tone of your questions. When I use the word interrogation in this concept, and of course I'm not a detective, but I play one on television, it's much more that the questions come out rapid fire. That's what I mean by interrogation. Like you have a notepad in your head, and it says, I got to get these 12 questions out in the first 30 minutes. And so what it feels like to the person, and by the way, men do it too, it feels as though you are being interrogated. I don't have any problem with any question personally, but I do think there is a natural flow to a chat of, where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Did you have a good childhood? Do you feel, your parents cool? What do you like to do for hobby? What do you do for fun? What's a favorite place you've ever traveled to? See, anybody ask me that, and I light up, because my favorite city to date is Prague in the Czech Republic. And so I will chat about going to Prague or whatever it may be, or any of the other 22 countries I've been to. But you just want to find something common that allows the conversation to flow, because usually in any answer of, I was a walk-on at 2 universities as a golfer, or I played in men's senior World Series baseball 7 times, usually out of conversations, it will lend itself to things that you like to do. And that's one of the reasons why the profile picture, which we talked about last time, already opens up what I'm going to bring to a conversation. If I see a couple of pictures and you have your dog in it or whatever, it'd be like, well, why did you choose that type of dog? Or what do you like out of that style dog? Or, and I can talk about my dog that died, and I buried him in 2003 of cancer, and I miss him so much, I still have never replaced him. Like, that'll give me a moment to be vulnerable with you. And I just think that there's a difference between having an agenda of questions that are rapid fire versus having the basic. I don't think anything about any of the basic questions we talk about in life there's anything wrong with any of them. I think what the issue is when someone starts to go down a road that maybe can get a little deeper. And certainly if I'm chatting about my childhood or my lifestyle, I could go way down here. I'll just simply choose not to early on. And then if the person presses me on that, that's being a jackass. And because the second I see a woman go to a place where I see her kind of stop herself, I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's enough for now. We just met each other. We change the subject. I'm not going to push somebody. So I think that's really what it's about. Do you feel like you're pushing at someone instead of talking with them? That's my benchmark.
Yeah, that's the difference. And I know we did talk about that before. And just because I had watched this episode and there was like 20 questions that a man had come on and said that men like to hear, 20 questions men like to hear. But I tend to agree with you is look at ourselves. How do we want, as women, do we want someone coming at us like they're interviewing us? No, we're wanting someone to get to know us. And it is those things that you say. I mean, you talk about your dog, why did you choose that dog? And you might learn something. Again, we talked about this in another episode. Have you seen any movies lately? Yeah, I saw this. Did you like it? Yeah, what did you like about it? And then you might, the scene where, these two were so in love and they were so connected. It really touched my heart. It just made me, get the, now you already know that person may be a bit of a romantic, and you know that about them. And the dog, I got my dog at a rescue. I feel so bad for all those dogs. Now the person's compassionate towards animals. So there's a lot you can learn from that really like high level conversation that is actually quite deeper than we think. We don't have to ask, those candid questions. And I know we're getting off on a tangent with that, but I was just.
What's your favorite food? What's your favorite dessert? Tell me the thing that makes you laugh the most. I mean, there's, do you have a funny sibling story? There's all kinds of stuff you can ask. But again, Kathlyn, it goes back to something that I said last episode we talked about. People are lazy. And this is the lack of preparing and thinking about your life, because you're the one who's doing this for people over 40. You've experienced a lot. You've learned a lot. How much time have you put into thinking about what does it for you? Way past the money, way past the looks, way past the sex. What does it for you? See, I know what does it for me, and I've known what does it for me for a long, long time. That doesn't mean that I haven't had my frivolous nights as a man. I have. That's not the point. That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing what leads to a connection. So I know what does it for me. And so to answer your question, honestly, is that you'll get a sense of me asking questions of somebody sitting across from me is going to wind up having sort of a thing here and a thing here and a thing here and a thing here. And you could connect the dots, and what you would see from afar is you would see Kevin sort of trying to discover whether or not this person has some of that stuff that he knows does it for him. Like that's what you would see me do.
Right. Oh, yeah. Interesting. What's really uncomfortable, and I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, and I know I have, and I've talked to multiple women that have, it's very exhausting, I guess, when you ask questions and you're not trying to drill somebody, you're just trying to have a back and forth conversation, and the person doesn't really have much of a response. You think about asking open-ended questions, that they just can't have a simple yes or no. But after a few of those, it kind of shuts down. Like to me, I always give a second chance. So here's my thing. People are nervous on the first meet, right? So I think they're probably not their best selves, if they're, unless they're a salesperson or an actor or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing.
Or just gregarious, or comfortable with themselves, whatever.
Exactly. But so I think, this person is nervous, just like I'm probably a little bit nervous, and I'm not going to really probably see 100% who they are on a meet. I'll see a little bit. I'll have an inclination of whether or not there's attraction, whether or not you have that vibe about them, that intuition that you talked about. But sometimes in order for somebody to open up, they might need a date or two. So if you see enough, my thing is if you see enough, if you don't see anything negative, and you do see some positive qualities, don't rule them out yet. Maybe have that second, meet, which would maybe become a date by the second time, spend a little bit more time, give them a chance to warm up, right?
Number two is number one. I mean, that's, again, to me, a first meet is the same as walking up and asking somebody to dance at a bar, metaphorically. Right. I don't know you. I've never spoken to you before. I don't know the tone of your voice. Would you like to dance? You chat a little bit on the dance floor. You have a nice thing, whatever, maybe it goes well for an hour or so. Think about how long we used to do this out at places and then you ask somebody for their number and you go on a date. That's a date. The next one.
Right.
So yeah, first meet is just a chit chat. I mean, I can't tell you the extraordinary waste of time it is for a lot of those. But yes, I agree with you, Kathlyn. And please know that if I were speaking to a crowd of men right now, I would be saying the same thing. Hey, lazy jerks, you can't have answers like you're in a deposition. Blah 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 blah. Yes. Blah blah blah. No. Blah, blah, blah. No. Like, this is not a deposition, man. This is, you don't have to have a gregarious personality to be interesting. That's BS. That's total BS. Everybody's personality is what it is, but you don't have to be necessarily a smart aleck or a great conversationalist to be enjoying to talk to. There's all kinds of people who have different personality. But if you just go, yeah, no, yeah, no, I mean, I could, guys just want to watch paint dry. So I say this to men too about being lazy, about preparing yourselves.
Now, as far as women, so this can go either way. So you're on a date with a woman, right? And you're asking those questions, and she is responding to you maybe in that manner, a little bit blasé, maybe not elaborating on any questions, and you're asking open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are basically elicit a 1 or 2 word response. Open-ended are more, for those who are out there, a closed-ended question would be, how are you okay? Yes or no. Did you have a good day? Yes or no. Or tell me about your day. What went on? That's an open-ended question. It gives people an opportunity to speak. So now we're trying to help women navigate this dating process, right? And we're trying to help women, understand men and how to converse and really display who they are within
Right.
that meet. And the meet, really, a lot of it's all about the initial meet. What advice do you have for women then? I know you've talked about what you would like in conversation. So you've dated, you've been around, I don't want to say been around the block, but you've been around the block,
No, I mean, honestly, when I say that, I've sat in the presence of many female strangers.
So
that's what dating is. I've sat in the presence of many female strangers since I was 16 years old. Yes. And had to drive a conversation. Yes.
So Kevin,
yes. Okay.
So you've sat with so many, but then there's those few that have drawn your interest in those few that weren't just in meet, and they were a second date or third, or maybe even a shorter long-term relationship. What was different about their interaction with you? What was it that you specifically saw, if you can think of it, that made a difference?
But it's who now you're talking about, what do I like in a woman? Because what you like in a man, beyond what you think he might look like naked or how much money he has or what car he drives, that's personal to you. So what turns me on about a female would be the fact that they, just in conversation and or how I knew them even before going out with them, the 2 women I fell in love with were both had been coming out of a marriage, and I knew them a little bit before I ever asked them out. So I had a sense of them. But even way beyond just the 3 women that I've had a long-term relationship with, still, whether it was talking to somebody for an hour and you wound up, at their place 3 hours later, they still all had a similar element to them, because I'm attracted to what I'm attracted to, regardless of what it becomes or doesn't become. You can't put a label on that. And so, like when there's elements of just what they're about that makes you attracted to them. Again, most men, it's just physical, especially if it's short term. And I'm sure I was that way for a part of my life when I was younger, but I can still even look back and there was always something about them that was very stable, cool, outspoken. I'm not real good. I've never been much of a girly girl kind of guy. And there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody's different. Everybody finds something they love. But the last woman that I was with had 3 brothers. She grew up with 3 brothers. She wasn't a tomboy, but she had 3 brothers. And there's an element of that that's a natural thing in women, that I just like somebody who's outspoken, somebody who has ambition, there's those simple elements to that. But it's like, I go back to what you were saying before, Kathlyn. If I ask you this question, we were out, hey, what's your favorite thing about your job?
Mhm.
You know, that's a simple question. I'm looking for, I didn't ask you what your job was. I said, what's a favorite thing about your job? Because people either usually are raising kids or they have a job. What's your favorite thing about being a parent? Like, I can ask open-ended questions all day long that are not interrogating. But typically, someone's demeanor is going to show me fairly quickly whether or not they have an essence. The word I use is essence early on. Specifics come later. But I always look for what is the core essence that's flowing off this person about the way they live their life without me in it. And that's what I always go, yeah, I see dead people. That's a line from that. And then also the matrix, like looking at the numbers in the matrix. Like, I'm trying to look in the overlay past just what someone's saying.
Mhm.
I want to see how they say it. I want to feel the essence of what this person's about, because to me, eventually a relationship is just a dance. How do you dance together, and how do you see the world together?
You know, I feel I can understand where you're coming from, and I love your suggestions for questions. You know, what do you love about being a parent, or what do you love most about your job? And those are questions, honestly, you know, that I, you know, a lot of times I may not ask, or I haven't been asked, and it really isn't interrogative, but it's getting a little bit to the core of the person. And I think what happens when you ask those type of questions, the passion in that person comes out, because I'm thinking personally about, what do you like about your job? Oh, here's what I love about my job. Or what do you love about being a parent? Oh my God, there's so many things I love about being a parent. I could tell you, I could give you a huge laundry list about it. So, but again, like, I will say personally, I have never been asked questions like that. And I feel like for a lot of men, with so many women in the mix, you know, I don't want to say they're in competition with them, but there are a lot of women out there that are looking. I know there's a lot of men as well. And how do we, like, well, I guess part of what we're looking at is how to stand out with only being who we are as our true self. So it's really showing your true self, let your true self.
Yeah, that's how you stand out.
So that your inner being stand out. Don't try to be, you know, the Stepford wife, or the, you know, I don't want to say names, but just don't try to be like somebody else. And then how you determine that, you know, is by knowing your passion, and also by finding someone else's passion. And maybe you can be totally attracted to somebody, and you may not mesh like for long term. You may mesh for short term. If you're okay with that, that's cool. But you know, if you know, it's a great way to get to know somebody. I love that. That's great advice.
Well, you have to be okay with it, because there is no guarantee. And that's one of the biggest challenges that I have with your gender, is that post-sex, there's supposed to be some guarantee attached to it. And there just isn't. And that's not about being a jerk or being a one. There just isn't. There is no, I've spent 18 years of my life with 3 terrific ladies on their own, and I'm not with any of them today. There is no promise or guarantee. This is called life. It's a partial information game. And
Well,
you know, you have to sometimes just accept that something goes as far as it can, and you move on as best you can.
Well, it's hard. I understand that, you know, because it's nothing worse than a broken heart, because you can't take a pill for it. You can't fix it. How, you know, it's probably one of the worst feelings in the world. I would say losing a child or something would be worse. But next to that, I don't know what's worse. But at the same time, I also feel that nothing lasts forever. Every relationship will end, whether you decide to terminate the relationship, end it, or somebody passes away.
Yeah.
Unless you die in a tragic accident together, you're going to pass away separately. So every relationship ends, and being appreciative of that relationship for what that is. And that's a huge part of it. Is I think that a lot of people, I'm not going to speak to everybody, but is not living in the moment. You know, even if it's a meet, even if it's a first date, stop worrying about that extraneous noise and BS, and just be in the moment. Like, what's this person about? What's my vibe? You know, when I first started internet dating, when I was first out of my marriage, you know, it was just uncomfortable for me. I have to say, it was really hard. So for those of you out there, I was married / in the relationship for close to 19 years, like 18 and a half years. And I had 2 kids with my ex-husband. So when I stepped out onto the dating platform again, I was uncomfortable. Like I didn't know
Sure.
exactly how to be. And so I felt like I bombed it. I went from novice to expert. Let me tell you, I've had some great relationships since, but the thing is I bombed it because I didn't, I wasn't living in the moment. It's a lot. You talked about self-awareness. You have to have, self-awareness is part of anything that you do. If you want to move forward, you really have to know yourself, because no one can know you if you don't know you, because you can't communicate who you are to that person. But I finally thought, you know what? I'm going to go every time I meet somebody. Here's how I'm looking at it. I'm going to learn something about myself, and I'm going to learn something new, whether it's about the person. Someone was a hairstylist. It was a bomb of a date, but I learned a hair conditioning tip, and another, someone was a magician, and I felt like I was with my 8-year-old son when he got his magic trick box, watching trick after trick after trick. Do I have to watch another one? But I learned a magic trick or two. So there you go. And just being in the moment for what it is. It is what it is. I'm not trying to make something out of it. I'm not trying to change that person. I'm there right now for this hour or this 2 hours, and I'm going to walk away with something. And that's something that I learned about myself, and something new that I learned. You can always learn something from someone else. There's someone.
Yeah. I mean, I had an entire meeting in which the woman talked about the fact she couldn't get her best friend to babysit her fish. I'm not joking. If you'd recorded the whole conversation, it was the only time that I ever, a lot of guys have done this. They show up, they see the person, they don't look like what they look like, guys leave them sitting there. Those people are just a-holes. I would never do stuff like that. But it was the only time that I actually ever cut something short, I always set aside an hour if it was a coffee. And after 40 minutes, I just said, unfortunately, I have to go. Like, she literally talked about why she was angry at her friend because she wouldn't babysit her fish. I had another woman who was very bright, was educated, had a good job, spent basically the entire conversation for almost 2 hours talking about the last guy she was sleeping with. I wanted to record her and just go, are you paying attention to what you're talking about? But I want to share two things with you, Kathlyn, because, of course, as you know, I'm writing a dating book. It's about dating. And I want to throw out two things for you, for your audience with regards to this. You don't live in the past, but you have to learn from it. That's one of the reasons why we go to therapy. So one of the things that I would say to all of us is, why don't you take yourself back to the first kiss? Take yourself back to the first person you were intimate with. Take yourself back and remember what it was like to be in the presence of boys or girls when you were really young, before you were either cynical or damaged, or because we all are damaged. I don't heal well. I'm a Pisces. I mean, I'm a tough SOB because of how I grew up, but I'm still a Pisces. And the other thing I would say is this, because your premise for this show is women over 40 who may be on their second or third time around the block, right? Mm-hmm. I've said this for years. First of all, two things that would change the planet in a heartbeat. One, you can't get married or have kids until you're 30. And the other is we could switch genders for 30 days and then remember what it felt like. It would change the world in span of 5 years. But go back and think about the first person you married, or the first serious relationship you had, and it didn't work out. And today, whatever number of years that is later, understand the reason why, if you met them in your older self, why you would never date them and you never would have fallen in love. That is something that we need to look at, because whatever didn't work from the first person and what we learned from them and who we are as a person today, why, if we encounter them, and I've never met a woman who said, yeah, if I met my ex-husband today, I'd still marry him. I've never met one person who said that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but one of the reasons I say that is most people don't change very much. You know, human beings are still killing each other over God, and we're a few thousand years down the road. So we don't evolve a ton. And I'm not being heavy or serious. I'm just saying this is a tool. Yeah. This is a tool for us to play with. I think we should have fun with this stuff. I don't think you should be like all crazy and deep and dark about it. It's like, laugh about it. It's like, oh my God, like I was dating so-and-so and then he was like blah and blah, and I kind of ignored it, and then we wound up getting married, and holy crap, it just got worse, and the thing, and if I met him today, I would have saw that right off the first date, and whoo, I would have been Seacrest out. It's like, that's the tool you need to go forward with, is remember what you've learned and who you've become. Because if you don't take that with you into the slightest casual meeting somebody, you're going to miss stuff that's right in front of you that will keep you, what we don't have as much time with, Kathy, as you said last episode, we're all on our last chapter. I don't have an interest in wasting time. It's not personal. You may be terrific. You may look really cute in a bathing suit, but I've learned more than 20 years ago, yeah, it used to be enough for me, as it is for most men. And it is for many, many, many men their whole lives. But that's not been enough for me for a long time. So I'm just going to move on down the road. But again, go back and look at what people were when you met them and how it ended, and realize today, if you met them today, what you would see that you didn't see back then because of who you are today. I think that's a huge thing to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And then it's also, ladies, take the time to get the junk out of your trunk. You know what I'm saying? So if you get the junk out of your trunk, you know, if you have not healed and you're holding animosity or pain or anger towards another person, you're not open to find love. And it's gonna, let me ask you, Kevin, that comes across. I mean, maybe in nonverbal communication or just what's talked about. Can you as a man, let me ask you, are you able to feel when somebody isn't completely open and ready?
Oh, God, yeah. Dogs and bees can smell fear.
Yeah.
Just like women, I mean, just like women can, why do you have such a great sense for a guy who's horny and desperate at a bar, but you can't sense other things later in life? Because you're being blinded by something you're not paying attention to. And yes, I appreciate the concept that love is blind. I might argue that extraordinarily high in chemistry and infatuation is blind. But, you know, that's why youth is wasted on the young. It's a great cliche. Learning to understand how you play the long game of yourself is one of the biggest challenges we have. And it's one of the reasons why my book that I'm doing is only on dating. My book only starts with a stranger and it ends with a monogamous relationship. It does not cover the relationship at all, because that's the foundation of the house of the relationship.
Yeah.
So, because that's the time you morph together and figure out, oh, we're going to do this thing. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's always stuff you learn about people and things but you know, tragically, men are really bad at changing. That's the old joke, you know, this guy sitting in his chair still in the same routine. And then unfortunately, a lot of times, you know, the opposite gender is bouncing around a lot, always changing. So you have this pinball machine and a pinball. You know, there's one thing sitting there and there's another thing going bing, 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 bing. And I say it all the time. It's the biggest joke God ever played. I mean, there's a challenge. It's not even Mars and Venus, because I know the book and I understand the author and I have the book, but my book will be a little different than that.
Just a funny thought came to mind. So when I was married, I'm thinking of the bing, bing, bing. You know, my ex-husband was just basically the same. You get the same thing every day. And he finally one night, he worked nights, so he came home at night. And he asked me the next day. I used to rearrange the furniture like every other day. It was back at stencil the walls back in the day. Like, you name it. It was. He said, "Can you just please tell me when you move the furniture so I don't trip over it in the dark?" But that was just like you said, ping, ping, ping. I'm moving this. I'm moving that. I still do it since this COVID-19. I've moved so much furniture around. I don't have anywhere else to move it because there's only so much space in the house. But I just want to change it up, and because I'm sitting here and I did the same thing before. So I see that, like, you know, consistency and the sameness is a very common thread, a common denominator amongst a lot of men. And I'm not saying all men, and I'm not saying there aren't women like that either, but it's about knowing who you are and who they are and just kind of figuring it out. And there was something else you said about I can't even remember what it was. I'll remember in a minute. But one thing I will say is we were talking about past relationships and having them not affect, you know, get the junk out of your trunk, and having them not, you know, don't bring that garbage, don't bring that baggage to your next relationship. It's not fair. Now, if I walked into, a restaurant, and, the cook had dropped all the dishes, and I walked in and they told me, I want to order. They said, no, you got to clean up all these dishes that the cook just dropped. I mean, that's a crazy analogy. I would be like, hell no, I'm getting out. I didn't break those dishes. I came here to have something nice, to sit down and have a meal. I was looking forward to that. And it's a strange analogy, but in a way has some validity to it, as far as how somebody might feel stepping into a relationship. They're coming in, hoping that something's nice, they're open, and they haven't done anything wrong. And they come in, and now automatically, before you get what you want, which is to even have a chance at a relationship or even a decent conversation with me, you got to clean up the mess, from the person that broke my heart, broke the plate, so to speak. And that's not fair. That is not fair. So I would say, and you said that you can sense that in a woman. So I encourage, all you wonderful ladies out there, if that is where you're coming from, there's a lot of stuff that you can do for healing, being self-aware and meditation, and, maybe a life coach or some counseling, or, reading some books and giving yourself that time to take care of your heart and to heal, because there's not, like we said, there's nothing worse than a broken heart. You can't, other than maybe the loss of a child, because you can't fix pain in your heart. There's no pill. So
no, and a lot of it comes with a lot of distrust, and we wind up heaping that onto somebody else.
Exactly. And how does that?
You have to write down. I mean, I know, the three things that I was challenged with in my last relationship, and we had a very loving relationship. I'm not one to argue or bark. I just don't do it. It's not something that I'm an advocate of in a relationship, but I know the three things that were the problem I had. And I also know the reasons why I didn't make them as important to me in the relationship as I should have. But I took the time to identify those things before I started dating again. And then you have to take the time to make sure that you are as healed as you think you are. Men go out and try to get really physical after being hurt in some way, because that's what testosterone does. And then unfortunately, women tell me that they've taken time to heal, but I don't see it. I see women go from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship with very, very little. It's like a revolving freaking door.
Darling, let me tell you the truth.
2 years, out for a month, back in one for 3 years, out for a half a month, back in one for two. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's amazing.
Let me tell you the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
Here's what women say. And I can't say all women, but a lot of them. The best way to get over a man is to get under a man. And so what you're saying is accurate, not all the time, but a good portion of the time. And it may even just be for a minute.
Yeah, but that's different. Getting under a man for a minute, for a moment, to feel desired, that's fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about going from relationship. See, that's the problem, is how commonly, not everybody, women define a relationship. Relationship isn't sex for a couple of weeks. That's not a relationship. You want to get under a man for a couple of weeks and feel better about yourself? Go for it. Then walk and get out. But I'm talking about a relationship.
Well, that's what doesn't happen a lot of the time, is then it's because of how, I'm not saying all women, I will not speak to all of them, but I've talked to hundreds of women. And a lot of the time, then once they have that intimate relationship, once they have sex with a man, even if they plan it to be like a get over it kind of one night stand, it doesn't turn out to be that. The stories, and I know you've seen them, probably lived them, that I've heard, someone having basically a one night stand with somebody, and then they get mad because they see makeup wipes in the trash in the bathroom, like someone else was here before me. So it's again about that expectation for some reason that a lot of us have, and it's fine. If you are, a woman is fine, having a 1 or 2 or 3 night stand, and realizing that, because like you said, in multiple men, it doesn't necessarily, it does not equate to a relationship to a man. Sex is separate from a relationship, and a lot of women, not all of them, combine it. And if you're not able to do that, then don't do it. Just know yourself. Again, it's about self-awareness. I'm going to tell you, I can't do that. I cannot, I'm not going to say I've never done it, but I have done it, which is why I realize I can't do that. It doesn't work for me. because so I don't do what doesn't work for me. I do what works for me.
Yeah, but at what point do you realize, Kathlyn, that you can't, sex does not make a human being want to be with you all the time.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but so at what point do you cut it off? It's like this is part of my point about recognizing what you don't have, what he isn't. And that's one of the reasons why sex is just sex. I know it's not just sex, I get it. But you need to, the second you have sex with somebody and the second you find yourself from an endorphin standpoint or for anything else that you find yourself being drawn to him simply because you had sex with him, you better start asking more questions. And you better start paying attention on a different level and not just be caught up in the emotional lust of it. Because at what point do you realize after having sex with somebody 2 or 3 times that this person isn't what I know I want in a relationship? And you can talk about it, but this is part of the problem, is the constant belief that you're somehow going to change a man with what's between your legs. No, you aren't. Ever. You never have. You aren't. So at what point, yes, I know that you get attached. I totally get that. But at what point are you willing to recognize he's not coming towards me in the way that I'm going towards him? And how much longer am I going to keep being intimate when it's not my thing to keep doing it if there's not a connection there before I finally go, listen, respect, got it, we're not quite there, I got to roll.
Yeah, so I know we're coming towards the end of the show, so I want to wrap it up with this last thought. So supposing a woman does, decide to be in that situation where she has sex with a man and they have no commitment, maybe it's, they've, gone out, maybe it's their first night, maybe it's second or third night, doesn't matter. And, as a man, you said, previously that, it's not a determining factor on whether or not you end up in a relationship with that woman. You may have, have sex with somebody on the first night and be with them, indefinitely, or you may not. It's not about the sex. It's about your connection with the woman. So now if a woman has sex with a man, I don't care when in the relationship. I don't care if it's first meet, second, third, fourth, 10th. And then if a man was interested in her, other than sex, there would be some type of outreach, planning for a date, phone conversation. And if it was just sex, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if it were just sex, you would get the call, hey, you want to come hang out? Got a bottle of wine? Talk to the women about that. What do they know? Okay.
Well, first of all, you have to pay attention to what the guy says. One of the things that I don't understand about this concept is once you've been physically intimate, no, I literally do not define that as the ultimate intimacy. I still define soulful vulnerability as the ultimate intimacy. So, but if a guy is genuinely interested in you, genuinely, not just trying to check on your life to make sure you're not screwing someone else, but genuinely interested in you, then it's not just a call. And it's not just not being lazy. What does he say to you? What does he ask you about? How does the subject matter change from meet 1 to date 1 to date 2 to date 3? Wow, we wound up naked. Date 4, date 5, naked again. What changes in his dialogue about what he's learning about you? What he's doing coming towards you? Just rewatch When Harry Met Sally. Just rewatch it again because it's brilliant.
That's my favorite movie.
Well, I'm just saying that they did it backwards. That's fine, but throughout the entire movie, the whole point of the movie was showing each one of them how much they were alike, and they also learned everything about each other through this long period of time. And yes, when you all of a sudden realize that you really do care about this person, it may take a little time to know it, but at the same time, it's like you have to pay attention to not just what a guy says, but what he does, and they have to go together because sex is easy. It's not about the decision. Once you've had it, it's easy. It's physical intimacy. It's not, but what goes along with that? And I just don't think women demand in their own way, in their own quiet way, to see that a guy is actually altering his approach to them in what he talks about and what he looks to do and how much he's paying attention to your life and what you like, and not just doing all that. That's my whole thing about sex. He's already gotten laid. So how much does he still show interest beyond just doing enough to continue getting laid? This should be a real benchmark for all women, freaking especially over 40. You've seen this movie enough. And so I just don't think that, I think that women, start having those strong feelings because sex involved. And what they tend to start doing is they simply tend to start trying to morph themselves into what makes it easiest for him to just keep on having sex with you. And if that's not what you want, then and again, in the other side of that, Kathlyn, I've seen it in my life, is that all of a sudden women will go from being very cordial and fun to just snapping. And they'll go from 0 to 100 and have a bunch of anger come flying out at the guy. And they've used the thing that I think is just the lamest excuse ever, which is, you're just using me. Well, no, actually, this is a mutual agreement, especially between two people. We're not 16 years old. So with Kevin, if someone ever said that to Kevin would just go, cool, well, I'm not. I understand that you seem to feel that way. That's cool. I'm Seacrest out. I wish you the best. I have no desire to hurt your feelings, and I will walk that fast because no one's ever going to accuse me of using them. That's one of the lamest things that we're taught when we're kids. And again, goes back to our first episode. Society does that because of the Madonna whore syndrome, and it's horse manure.
100%.
Be an adult. Again, if you're confused about what I'm discussing, watch the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney. In that case, it was the woman who was the adult. Be an adult. But I just don't see women walk when they should. That's the biggest. If I said one thing about dating my whole life, it would be, in your gut, he's not coming toward you, and you still stay.
Wow. That's great advice, Kevin. And, I just, to all you lovely, beautiful ladies out there looking for love, there's so much hope for you. You will find it, but it's about understanding men and the way they think, and taking a look at ourselves and learning how to navigate that process. Maybe we're not experts, maybe you're novices, or maybe somewhere between the two, but it's about being mindful, being aware, and understanding that your actions or reactions matter, and know what you want, right? You're saying, Kevin, know what you want, know yourself, and know when to walk. Yeah, know yourself, and know when, the thing is, I love the last thing that you said is know when to let it go, know when to walk away. Not, what's that saying? Not everyone is meant there to be forever. People are in your life for a reason.
Reason, seasons, and a lifetime.
Yeah, and it's to teach you, a lesson or learn something about yourself. So embrace the learning opportunity, embrace the ability to, find something new about somebody else, something about yourself, and continue to grow in life and keep moving forward. Every time I look at it like this, every relationship that doesn't work, it's like every door that closes on your path. You're going this way and it closes, so it brings you this way, but it's all bringing you inevitably to where you're meant to end up in life and where you choose to end up in life if you pay attention and don't force something that's not meant to be, because you can spend your lifetime, banging your head against a wall, and guess what? The wall wins. It's stronger than your head. So again, Kevin, I thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
Hello, everybody. And thank you again for tuning in to today's podcast, Swiping Over 40. If you like what you heard, go ahead and subscribe to my podcast channel. And ladies, I'm super excited because I do have a book coming out shortly, and it's titled Dating in a Fast Food World, The Girlfriend's Guide to Internet Dating, She Says, He Says. You're going to love it. It takes into account anything you can imagine that you might encounter while navigating through the online dating process. But not only does it have the input from a woman, it has the input from a man as well. So you'll get the inside scoop. You can also subscribe to my newsletter by going to kathlyn.com. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you, and may you all find love.